Okay, good morning. Can everyone hear me okay? I'm Jason Antonick with Cooperative Business Services, or CBS. I provide commercial lending services in a unique manner with credit unions, so it's a pretty neat thing. I'm also the treasurer of the I-70-75 Association, so we're doing pretty good. We're solvent, so that's good, right? And I'm here to introduce Beth. I had a little bit of time to talk with Beth. Beth Robinson is the president and CEO of Uptown Consortium. Uptown Consortium has leveraged the Anchor Institution's assets and ecosystem to invest over $400 million in uptown real estate and economic development projects, including over $1 billion in project investments. What is Anchor Institution's assets? So we're going to find out about that. Beth has more than 25 years' experience in community development. Beth previously held economic development roles with the University of Cincinnati, the City of Cincinnati, the City of Covington, the City of Springdale. Beth has a graduate degree from the University of Cincinnati and is a member of the Brookings Institute. She's also a big Reds fan. Please help me welcome Beth.
Good morning, everyone. Can you hear me okay? Good morning. It's nice to be here. I really appreciate the invitation. I do have a Dayton connection. My parents met here a long time ago and lived here, bought their first house in Dayton. My mother grew up here, went to high school, but that was long before I came along. So, but I'm very happy to be here. I'm going to start by talking a little bit about who we are and who our members are, and a little bit about Uptown to give you some background. And then I'm going to dive right into what our current strategic initiative is, and that is the Uptown Innovation Corridor. So I'm going to go into detail on that. A little bit about the consortium. It was formed in 2004 by the chief executives of the Uptown institutions, and those are across the screen: Cincinnati Children's Hospital, UC Health, the Cincinnati Zoo, Tri-Health, which operates a medical system in Cincinnati, and the university. And so they came together because the neighborhoods around their campuses in Uptown were declining. They were having difficulty in attracting students and top research talent and employees to the area. So they knew they needed to organize and address it in a collective way rather than each of those institutions going off doing their own initiatives. And that's really what we are, and that's what we do. So we work around those Anchor Institution campuses in Uptown, which is just a mile north of downtown Cincinnati, just past over the Rhine. We're just up the hill. And Uptown is the region's second largest employment center, just behind downtown. And so we are an economic powerhouse in our own right, and our organization is responsible for the economic development work in that area. As Jason mentioned, we have invested a significant amount of our member capital into the area, and our method of working, just to give you a little background, is we work in the areas strategically prioritized, and then once those areas are on their way to redeveloping and the private sector comes in to finish them, then we exit and go to a different area. So we originally started, if you're familiar with the university campus there, around the Short Vine area and just to the north of the university. Those areas were in steep decline, and that's where we started, and we invested a lot of our capital. But Uptown is a large area. It is the area highlighted along in the white there, along Martin Luther King Boulevard, between I-71 and I-75. It encompasses 5 urban neighborhoods, and that influences our work because the way I view it, we work for the institutions, but a lot of our work is with the neighborhood leadership and with our neighborhood residents. And one of the startling facts is that because 60,000 people live there. So we're a little bit different than, let's say, 3CDC and Over the Rhine, where their population, they have less residents, they're trying to build it up. We are working in fully developed urban neighborhoods, some in better shape than others. And so a lot of our strategies is aimed at, or are aimed at, helping the business districts there. We do a lot of small business support and development. We do clean and safe. We hire off-duty police officers where needed. And we keep Cincinnati Beautiful to pick up litter 5 days a week in Uptown. So we do a lot more than just our real estate investments. But the real estate part of it seems to get the most attention, and that's what everyone is most interested in. But a lot of our work is truly working with our neighborhood leadership in addressing housing issues and other type of things. The way we work is really involves building consensus. We spend many, many hours with our neighborhood stakeholders and the institutions because we exist in that area between those two. And sometimes you probably are aware they don't always get along. And so we view our role as a little bit of translation between the institutions and the neighborhoods. And one of the things that we're pretty proud of is as soon as the new interchange off of I-71 was announced by the governor that it was funded, and we'd advocated that for many years, we quickly organized and developed a 33-person steering committee to help us plan what that area around that new interchange will be. And we did a lot of visioning sessions, which is what the picture shows, and our neighborhood residents really felt listened to and empowered because they were right there with some of the leaders of the institutions deciding collectively what this area would become. The area this is the before picture. This is basically what it looks like today. This is at Reading and Martin Luther King Boulevard, a major intersection at the new interchange of I-71. So this is what we are starting with, and it looks bleak. So you can see we have a lot of room to improve. But the vision that we collectively agreed to was a mixed-use knowledge center, and that was in 2013, 2014. We really took our time, had charrettes, we had community meetings, we had open houses. We went before the City Planning Commission, and then City Council ultimately adopted the vision plan for this area. And basically, what it has morphed into is an innovation district, because we know that Uptown has assets in the research and education and tech that we can leverage to attract businesses and companies, and probably even more important, the talent that those companies and businesses employ. Everyone is in the talent chasing game these days, and to be competitive, cities are scrambling to figure out how you compete for this talent and young talent. We are lucky that we have the university right just down the street here, a mile down the street, the main campus, and we have all the research and innovation that occurs in our anchor institutions like Children's Hospital, which is the #3 pediatric hospital in the country, and the University Medical Center. So we have that to leverage. And for the first time in Uptown, we actually will have space to attract businesses. Because when you look at a map of ownership in Uptown, most of the land is owned either by the institutions or the government, or just small slivers of property owned by private citizens. It's really difficult for developers to get a critical mass of property. So that's what we're aiming for here, and you have to really create a bold vision. And this picture really describes better than words of what we're aiming for. There we go. So what informed our work probably about 4 years ago now, maybe 5, is some of the work that was coming out of the Brookings Institute. And they began this study, and their book came out of it about innovation districts. And when you think of innovation districts, well, what are those, and what are they talking about? And you're probably aware, but the granddaddy of them all is Silicon Valley. It's also Kendall Square in Boston. These two areas have been in existence for 50 years, and so they have had time and are way ahead of the pack, so to speak. And they have resulted in a cluster of innovation and tech talent, and that is now cities everywhere are trying to replicate that model in a different way, in a more urban context sometimes. If you think about the research triangle and what that was and how hot that was at one time, young people don't want to go to a research park out in the middle of nowhere anymore. They want to go to an urban, diverse, dynamic environment. And so we feel Uptown is perfectly situated to compete in this new battleground. And so that informed our work very early on. And the idea behind an innovation district is that you have a mix of uses. So we're not just trying to attract and attack, I guess, biohealth or tech or one sector. We know we are strong in tech and we are strong in health. But if you think about technology today, it goes across every sector of business. And just yesterday, the Cincinnati Business Courier had an article about Kroger now has partnered with the university, and they've opened up a technology and innovation center in this area. And the reason they did that, and the reason we feel other companies will, you don't think of Kroger as a tech company, but it most surely is. And one of our executives that we work with at Kroger's described it as, we're not a food retail company anymore. We're a tech company that happens to sell food. So if you think about, that's a total shift in thinking, and it really is a total shift in urban planning and community development, which is our space. The other, this is just a slide of some of the sectors. It involves a lot. It's not just your IT graduates. It's also places like Google and places like Kroger's. They need people that come from a diverse set of backgrounds. They need people who can write. They need people who can think. So in studying all these areas, and we've taken a lot of field trips over the years, Cortex in St. Louis is another model that is far along in their development. And most recently, last fall, we visited again Georgia Tech at Tech Square and what they're doing. And if you follow what these places are doing, I mean, it's truly amazing. And we feel that Cincinnati has to get there, has to catch up, has to be on that edge, or we're going to lose, we're going to be left behind. And so that is the premise of our work. So on the planning and community development and economic development side, that means our land use planning and our work needs to be urban in context, and it needs to be amenity rich, and it needs to have activated with people, whether that's housing or small businesses. And for us, because we work so closely with the community, and we are working very hard not to leave our communities behind, many of which around Uptown are low and moderate income neighborhoods. But also, we want diversity there. We want the neighborhood residents to feel comfortable coming into this area that we're creating. And so that informs all of our planning work and our development. So if you think about it, and this is a map, it may or may not mean that much to you, depending on how familiar you are with this area, but all of Uptown really can be called an innovation district, and we are really marketing as Cincinnati's innovation district now. Because of the good work, even at the Cincinnati Zoo, they are internationally known for their research in botany and in animal reproduction and so forth, things I barely understand. I just know they're very advanced. And so it's all throughout Uptown, really. And that's an important point to make because our work really goes down to a specific area. And so some of our work over the last few years, we've been working on this redevelopment opportunity, and now we've got that in motion, and I'll show you some of the work. We're starting to go back up now and look at a wider view, and how can we connect this area back to these institutions and beyond. We laid out some goals and objectives for our innovation corridor, and in my mind, one of the most important is the last one, and that's expand opportunities for residents. We are very committed, and it's tough work, it really is, but we are very committed to integrating our residents and giving opportunities, whether that's jobs or education opportunities, and that is the story we're writing as we speak. It's an ongoing thing. We try some things, they don't work maybe, or maybe they do, and but we are spending a lot of time and resources in that area. So our work really began to build this innovation corridor with land assemblage, and our members funded us to go out as soon as we knew the new interchange was coming. We went out and tried to buy as much land in the area that we can, because if you don't own it, then you can't control it. And we can have all the pretty plans in the world, but we would be boxed out. And we did not want, you know, your typical interchange development, which would be hotels, although I'll get to that later. There's a lot of hotels planned. But hotels and gas stations and those kind of things, fast foods. We knew that would not advance our community, either the anchor institution community or the residents. So collectively, we said we don't want that. So we control a lot of the land. We bought roughly an area of about 45 acres. And some developers did jump in and buy, and now we're working with some of those. Some developers decided to wait until we got a collective group of properties and then began working with us. So we've had both things happen. We've done a lot of land use planning and design. We had Sasaki, which is you probably are familiar with them. They're out of Boston, just a premier land use planning and design firm. They did our original corridor vision plan back in 2014-15. And now just last year, we brought them back because now we have land assembled. We have some projects starting to materialize. So we wanted them to come back now and take us to a different level and articulation of our plans. We've spent a lot of time with that and a lot of money, I might add. Economic inclusion is very, very important to us. 4 years ago, we engaged a local firm really took a chance on them, to be honest with you, of 3 community leaders that came together to form Web Ventures, and they have been our economic development team. Because we wanted a group that would be hands-on and down on the ground. We just didn't want someone to come in and do a plan for us. We needed help in the implementation of that work. So we worked with them, and now we are in a good place in terms of connecting folks to jobs, whether they're contracting jobs, jobs in the projects, and also investment opportunities. Community engagement and communications, I've talked a lot about that. That's very important. We're branding. If you go to our website, you'll see a lot of information there. We're always refining that. You know, you could spend a fortune on marketing and branding, and we've tried to be cautious about that, but we're entering into a new phase where I think we're going to have to just blow it up and do some serious marketing. And then the last piece is the innovation programming and tenant attraction. And that's the area that we're moving into now. And we're working with our partners at Ready Cincinnati, the regional marketing group, and the chamber, and then our institutional partners to attract tenants, to attract tenants that we want there. We don't necessarily want a lot of call centers and things like that. We want to curate the tenants in the area. And I think that is going to be difficult work because developers, being developers, they want to make money and they want to get their projects done and filled up. And we're saying, time out. You've got to work with us, and we are going to be involved in the tenanting. Wish us luck on that one, because I think that one's a tough one. So the 4 quadrants, we like to call them, at the major intersection along MLK is the area where you see the little boxes where we've planned and refined. So we have all 4 of those areas underway. And you'll see the close proximity to the interstate. I mean, the ramp is right there. So the access couldn't be better. It's also to the south, to the end of the page is downtown. It's just literally, I don't know, maybe 2 exits down, and you're downtown, you're on the river, you're at the Reds game. And then to the west, you have the university and all the institutions. So it's really ideally situated. One of the things that we've really been intentional about is connecting the district back to the neighborhoods, and now really elevating our work, taking a wider view of connecting it back to the anchor institutions. We want a walkable district, and I'll get to more of that later. And we also want to infuse it with healthy living. So you'll see, I think I have a slide later on about a ecological corridor that we're planning, that we want to do bike and walking paths, because some of our neighborhoods in Uptown have health disparities, and we feel this is a great opportunity to partner with the community on some of those aspects that can improve health of the community, and so we're working to integrate those items into our plans. So working with Sasaki and MKSK out of Columbus, who's doing a lot of the detail work as well, we've really come up with 3 aspects to our plans, and it's great streets, great spaces, and great places. And these elements are so critical to attracting talent and attracting businesses. Like I said earlier, people don't want to just be in an office building in an office park. And to get a true innovation district, you need the cross-pollination of ideas among businesses and among sectors. So you might have an engineering company located next to a design firm, and there could be some, or a medical device firm, or a researcher, and we feel it's that mix of talent and people is what distinguishes an innovation district from just a regular mixed-use development. So what do we mean by great streets? We want quality streetscape, and we want a sense of urbanity. So in other words, we don't want, and it's really the direction I think everyone's going to, you want a street grid, you want streets, buildings up to the street, and to create a streetscape. And that's where we feel we can activate it. And we also want mobility. We want people to be able to walk among buildings and within the district. The other thing is parking. Parking is always a challenge in Uptown because we have about 55,000 people who work in Uptown. Combine that with the 60,000 residents in the area. You add on the zoo's 2 million visitors every year. The university has football games and so forth. I mean, mobility is a big concern of ours because you've got to get people in and out, but the challenge is doing what we want to do in that context is sometimes a challenge. So that's always a work in progress. We also want to, like I said earlier, a mix of uses. So each on each of those 4 blocks that I showed you earlier, we want an integration of housing, maybe some hospitality, and office. We don't want, the office block, the housing block. We want it all integrated because that's the secret sauce for these innovation districts. And then engaging the public realm, that's a fancy term, current term of the day, but this is really what we're aiming for. We want someday to walk by and you see people strolling along through these developments, strolling along the sidewalk to go to eateries. Maybe they work at Children's Hospital, so they're walking to the campus there, and then they maybe have a lab over in the area that we're developing. You know, we want it to be active. And so we're working diligently with the city and others to make that happen. As I'm sure all of you know, cities are always strapped for cash, and they always have competing priorities. But we are advocating, and we're trying to work very, very diligently with them to invest in this area. And this is just another view. When we were in Tech Square in Atlanta, you know, it's just really amazing because they've been at it for 20 or 25 years. And when I sat down with my counterpart, he was very candid about some of the mistakes they made. And some of that was not building in enough green space so people can meet and collaborate, and also not animating the first floor. So some areas of Tech Square, you'll see there's just these big office buildings, and it's kind of dead on the first floor. So now they're working to retrofit all of that and investing in green space, and the prices of the land have gone up, so it makes it very challenging. So that's an example of where we visit these places and we learn from some of their mistakes, and we're working very hard not to repeat that here. And then we see it as a mixture of mature companies as well as startups. We feel that you can't fill some of the projects that we are trying to build here due to the cost of the land, cost of the building, with total entrepreneurs and startups, right? You have to have bankable tenants. So we feel we have a lot of companies in Cincinnati, Kroger being an example, P&G being another one, where they all need these innovation components. And a lot of times they don't want them at their main campus because that doesn't feel like innovation. So we feel it's a perfect fit to come up to Uptown and offer space there where they can bring people in off-site. So we feel it's going to be a mixture. This is an important point for practitioners. I think you'll appreciate this, is you can have all the plans and work with developers, but you really need to guide and be pretty specific on what you want. So we've had MKSK out of Columbus. They've been great to work with Sasaki in developing design guidelines. Now the good part about that is we control the land at this point, most of it. So we have development agreements and we can put these covenants in those agreements. But now we're working with the city to adopt these as a regulation. And they're doing some of their own studies, and then we'll join forces and get these design guidelines codified. So where we are now, you know, we've done a lot of planning, a lot of land assembly. We have projects teed up. We have a lot of investment already in motion. And we feel it's a great story for the state of Ohio that put in a lot of money, about half of the funds for the new interchange, that we can leverage that public infrastructure project and really return their investment multiple times. And so that's part of the story we like to tell. So this is one of our first projects, and it was a lead project that really sets the tone for what we're trying to do. And this on your left is an old Sears building, and it had been owned by the university for some years. They were just using it for storage. It has a lot of memories for residents and really a lot of people in Cincinnati. This is the Sears store they came to buy their kids' clothing for school and tires and everything. It was kind of like a community icon. Well, Reading Road had been in decline for years, and one by one things closed up, and in the 70s the Sears building closed up. The university took the lead and redeveloped. They put about $40 million or so into redeveloping. They tore off a piece of it, a later addition, and then they saved the structure, and they've turned it into their innovation center. And their new director of innovation that the university president hired last year or 2 years ago has come in, and this is where they operate. It also is a incubator accelerator of sorts. this is where companies, this is where Kroger is located. P&G has a innovation space here. Cincinnati Bell recently moved in. This is where these innovation centers and partnerships with the university are going to be housed. Now, what we hope to do is they start there, and then when they want to expand or grow that they will then locate in one of the buildings that we're planning. But for now, this is really our flagship of the innovation corridor, and it's essentially filled. The university also spent a lot of money and time on the lower level developing a workspace where you can come in, students come in to make things, and the community is able to do that as well. They have laser cutters, everything that you would think of for makerspace. And it's been very popular, and the university president has set a goal that every student coming through will touch this building in some way, either have a class, come over for a program, so the university is highly vested. This is a project just to the west of our redevelopment area, and this is a new neuroscience center that anchors our western edge of the innovation corridor. The university, UC Health, and the university is combining clinical care, research, and teaching into this new facility, and they were able to attract a nationally known doctor from, I think he came from Harvard, to run the center, and we were able to put New Markets tax credits that we have, we are an allocatee of New Markets, into this building, and accelerated that development by years because they would have had to fundraise for that. And so we're very excited about that, and that's one of our major projects that's already open. And then this is just a summary slide of each of the 4 quadrants, of the 4 corners that we have underway. And I'm going to flip through to go into a little bit more detail on each one. So the first one is we secured about a year and a half ago a major federal facility that the city had been chasing probably, for a decade or more, and this was the National Institute of Occupational Safety and Health. They have regional facilities across the country, and they have one in Cincinnati. And right now they are in 2 small, rather uninspiring buildings, and so they've always been wanting to combine those and be near the university and the hospitals where they already have partnerships, but we could never assemble land for it. So this was our opportunity. Between the university and the UC Health Center, we were able to assemble that whole block, and they selected this site for their new facility. It is funded and ready to go. We're just waiting for GSA to give us the green light and for them to start. And if any of you have worked with the federal government, no offense to anybody in here, but they kind of march to their own drum, and they'll tell us when they're ready. But we're ready for them. And the good thing about that is they bring 550 existing jobs on day one, which will help with as we try to attract restaurants and so forth, and they won't have a cafeteria, which is key. And then there's opportunity to create about 250 more jobs over time. So we're very excited about this. Our first developer that we started to work with is Terex and Messer. They have a partnership, and they're doing a mixed-use development with 2 office buildings, a hotel, and then future phase for additional office and housing. They have been great to work with. They worked with us very early when I warned them, look, we're still getting our sea legs here. We're still making this up basically as we go. So you're going to be our guinea pig. If you have patience, we'll work with you. If not, but they have truly been great and really a model developer for us and has set the standard high. That rendering is under development. That was just an earlier rendering, but they're working with the university because UC realized to jumpstart our innovation corridor, they needed to make a significant investment because they are the drivers, because they have the talent and they have the research capabilities that companies will want to be near. And so they are taking one office building, about 180,000 square feet, and then that allows Terex to then build the second building on spec, and that'll be about 150,000 square feet And that is the space where we hope to attract the companies that want to locate near the university and Children's Hospital and so forth. So that will give us our area, our first building where we can actively try to tenant and attract businesses to. That, we had the groundbreaking, I believe, in March or April, and that takes 30 months to complete because the city is building a parking garage as a podium for the office. So the garage has to be built first, and then so it will be opening fall of 2021. Then across the street, we have another developer, MLK Investors, and they are planning another mixed-use multi-phase project. This is just the first phase of the project. It's really covers about 3 or 4 phases, probably 4 phases when it's all said and done. And so the first phase is office again and housing. They would like to do a hotel. We're trying to convince them not to because we don't want a hotel necessarily on every corner, but it seems like that's the preferred development of the day. And we do have market capacity in Uptown, but we just want to make sure, this is where the tenanting comes in, we want to make sure there's going to be enough office space developed that we get the critical mass of employees and businesses there. And then over on across the street from both of those is, we're very excited about this development. Queen City Hills was selected last fall. They are a minority-owned development investment group, and this really marks a great opportunity for minority ownership in the corridor, which we felt was a very important goal. And these gentlemen came together, and they are then making their plans. They're going to hire a developer to work with, but they will retain ownership of this block. And they're actively looking to acquire more property to add to it. But again, they will do housing, office, some retail, and they say hospitality. We're trying to rethink that with them, but we'll see how that goes. So this is the scale of what we're talking about. This is one rendering of the scale. We want a dense urban footprint, and this is one view. And you can see, I think you can see, there's just areas right behind where you can see the institutions, but also it's right up against houses where people live. And so we are currently working with the neighborhood of Avondale, which is where this land is at, on a housing strategy. We did extensive work over the past year and a half, and now they're doing community engagement and working to develop priorities. And we're talking about maybe funding a housing fund that we can help folks keep their homes, because we're a little bit worried about, a lot worried about developers swooping in, because they're already looking in projects, around the perimeter of this, which is a good thing, but we just want to make sure homeowners and current residents will stay and have the ability to stay. We partnered with Children's Hospital a couple of years ago to do a housing improvement program where if Children's provided funds in a target area, we're trying a pilot program, provide funds to help repair the exterior of homes, and if they stayed in the home for 5 years, the money would be forgiven. So that was very successful. They funded a phase 2, and then phase 3 they just funded, and which was perfect. They are not partnering with us this time. They're partnering with the Avondale Development Corporation, because and then they will be implementing the program, which we like because we partnered with the Avondale Development Corporation in the first phase to get their sea legs and build their capacity. And now they're ready. They are now at the point where everyone has confidence in their accounting, and they're staffed up and so forth. So they have graduated off on their own. So we do a lot of things like that where we'll pilot, try something, and then we kind of pitch it to other folks, because we really try to focus our area and our efforts. So this is just another view of the density. that we're talking about. I mean, it's almost, we're talking 2 million square feet of office when this thing is all built out. And then now, like I said, we're starting to look at other areas that the institutions own, but also connecting back with the neighborhoods. And so what do we have next? We are, as I said earlier, we're entering into that phase that is really critical. It's make or break of attracting tenants, building the right environment, making sure developers do what we want them to do, which is always fun. And we're working with the city on a streetscape plan and design guidelines. We continue our economic inclusion efforts and community engagement. We hold open houses 4 or 5 times a year for neighborhoods just to come in and talk to developers and see current plans, ask questions. We're trying to get, we work closely with the neighborhood leadership, but we're also trying to get down to, residents and employees that work in the neighborhood as well. And then again, we are rethinking our marketing and communication program. I think we're going to have to start investing heavily in that. So I'm not sure how I'm doing for time, but I would love if anyone had any questions. It's kind of a high-level overview, but perhaps you could have some questions and we could start a dialogue. I think that would be interesting.
Do you expect some of the facilities to be mixed use so that there would be like maybe small business, restaurants, that sort of thing on lower levels, so that there's infrastructure to support people in sort of a new downtown area?
Right. That's right, and that's one of the things we're building into our development agreements is activating that first floor. And activating can take a couple of different forms. It could mean in some cases, the university's first floor on the building they're taking, they might put a center or some kind of use that people go in and out of, right, rather than just office or research. In another building, it might be small businesses. And we're working with a local group, and maybe some of you are familiar with the Mortar, which we've worked in the past, and they work in the minority community and women-owned business space, and they try to incubate and support those. We're really working, trying to get some tenants, because we'd really love locally owned. We're working with the bakery, for instance. She lives in Avondale. Has a small operation somewhere else, but we're actively working with her because we'd love to see her locate there and expand her menu and so forth. So, anyone else? Yes, sir.
I would ask, say you're an enterprising person in Cincinnati and you're planning on opening a business. How do you juggle the narratives or compete with
Over the Rhine.
How do you compete with trying to draw entrepreneurs or people that gamble in this space when there's so much success currently?
Right. No, and that's a great question because I think everyone struggles to compete with Over the Rhine. And right now, Over the Rhine is fabulous. I mean, a lot of small startup restaurants and locally owned places locate there, and that's great. We feel, though, that because of the demographics that we have in Uptown and the number of jobs and the number of people living there, that it's a strong market. It's not going to be the same space because it's going to be newer. It's not going to be in the old, quaint kind of buildings. It's going to be a different kind of look. But we're also working in an area in Avondale we're working with Steiner Real Estate that did Easton up in Columbus. They're doing an urban mixed-use street in Avondale that's a few blocks from this area, where we feel some of that smaller, maybe even ethnic. We would love to get some ethnic food on that street as well. So we have 2 different feels to where we feel we can compete. But it's tough. It's very tough, and I think you have to subsidize these small businesses. I know that's what 3CDC does to get them started, and we've done that in the past, where we'll do rent concessions or do tenant improvements to get them there. Yes, sir.
What's the proximity of the innovation corridor to the Over the Rhine? Is that?
Yeah, let me see if I can. It's about a mile north. I don't know if I've got a context map. I've got it. Pardon me while I flip. It's just a mile north. Now, one of the challenges that we, if any of you works in an anchor district area, one of the challenges we have is getting the employees out of those campuses, right? Because if you work at Children's Hospital, you have a cafeteria, they have subways in the lot. I mean, that's really a real challenge. So part of the issue is easy access and connectivity. So if you're working in one of those areas, you don't have to go all the way to the parking garage that might be off-site, get in your car, go eat. It's really tough. But, and the same thing goes for over the Rhine, it's just a mile down the road, but we don't have a good connection. And that's why I hate to mention this word because it's very controversial, but we have a streetcar in Cincinnati that you may have heard about. Well, whatever. I'm staying out of that one, but I don't really have a good context map, I guess. But, you know, in a perfect world, is that pretty good? Yeah, you can see the downtown is in the red by the river, over the Rhine's in between, and we're up on the blue. It's not very far, but in many ways it's a world away, you know. We would love to see, we're working with Queen City, with Metro and SORTA now on a transit hub that we want to embed in the district because we want people to hopefully take bus rapid transit to work, and then we're working on a shared shuttle system that among our institutions, it's all about connectivity, but we would love better connections to downtown and over the Rhine. And I don't know if that was your question. As I'm rambling, I realize I don't know if that was your question, but it's something we struggle with in Uptown.
We took a trip, I-75, we visited the over the Rhine.
Yes.
Last year, and so that was the first time I'd ever been to the over the Rhine area.
Yeah.
So I was just wondering, it's very interesting what you're saying.
Yeah, it's very, you know, I'm just, you know, all this beautiful pictures, but there's just a lot of challenges that we work through. I think all of you can appreciate that, and this is one of them. It's how do you make those connections? And one of the things that, you know, we had the idea, everybody says, oh, if the Uptown institutions would just have a shared shuttle and all that. That sounds easy, but we've had firms come in and work with us, and the Uptown is so big, and the institutions are so big, the time to travel around Uptown is almost impossible to make it where you're not waiting 20 minutes, which no one will take it, you know, the head times and so forth. I think it's the same thing for the streetcar, quite honestly, unless I think a lot of people complain about that downtown, and they're trying to tinker with it to make it better, but.
You kind of touched on the challenge of having a huge employer that then builds a cafeteria in the facility, and then nobody ventures out just because like the cafeteria like in high school. How do you plan on in the development of this space taking that shot on? I know you mentioned green spaces or just engaging things that get you outside of that building. I'm just curious how you guys kind of tackle it.
Well, it's a work in progress, quite honestly, because coupled with the sheer physical impediments to people going out on lunch sometimes, they only have a half hour a lot of times in the hospitals. I mean, that, you know, that's impossible. So, but the thing that gives me hope is right across from the medical center at UC, there is one of the most successful Chipotles has located. And I mean, it kills everyone in the region. So the only way you can get there is to walk, because you have to cross Martin Luther King Boulevard, which is like 6 lanes, but the city's put in medians and so forth. So we know it can be done. It's got to be the right mixture, and we are moving towards. There will be shuttles between this area and back to the institutions. They just might not go all around Uptown, but UC is also already running their shuttle over to the 1819 Innovation Hub. The other thing is if you have uses where their people need to come over to, whether it's a lab or working with a company, people will make those movements. Yes?
You talked about the Chipotle being successful. How do you strike a balance between getting mom and pop shops and like local entrepreneurs with national chains? Because I think there has to be some kind of balance in order for these spaces to be successful. And what's kind of your model?
Well, I don't really have the answer, but I would love to hear if anybody has figured that out. How do I answer that? I mean, we all know developers need someone that can pay the lease and afford the tenant improvements and so forth. We think it's going to be a balance. We have new market tax credits. We have some other financing that we could help attract the right kind of small mom and pop, particularly on Burnett Avenue, which is the area adjacent to this area. We feel that that's doable just by what we can control. But there most surely needs to be a national there too. I mean, we think it's a mixture. We just don't want it all to be, you know, Panera and Subway, although those are nice. But so I think you have to subsidize. I mean, that's the only thing I know how to do to make that work in these types of developments anyway. Any other questions, or are you hungry? You probably want to go to lunch. That's the danger of being right before lunch. But okay, well, thank you so much. I hope my timing was okay. I'll be around for a little bit if anyone wants to ask any questions. And then I brought with me Brooke Duncan, if you just wave. She's our community development manager and works a lot with our neighborhood. So thank you all very much.